Hello and welcome back again to Across the Gridiron. I am Matt, and once again, I am joined by the man who finally admitted to me this week that Micah Parsons, he may as well get traded to the Saints because he's got more chance of winning a Super Bowl in New Orleans than he ever will in Dallas. Eddie, how are you, my friend?
I'm very hyped, Matt, and hope you're well too. And you might be actually correct. I am coming to terms with the fact that, Micah Parsons, might leave the Dallas Cowboys, but we will get to that in a second. But it's preseason, and I am so excited because football is coming, right? You can almost smell when it actually means something, with all the preseason games going. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, guys. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate all of you who keep coming back. We keep wondering why, but we're glad that you do. So that's always good.
Yeah, we have no idea why people are coming back, but for some reason they still do. So look, we will break down. We're gonna go through some of the big talking points from preseason, which rookies impressed, and we'll laugh at Dallas in the Cowboys corner as probably as normal. But this week we're gonna start off something with a little bit different this week, and we're gonna focus on a team who we haven't really talked about for a while, and we're going to have a bit more of a deep dive into them, and that's the New England Patriots. Now, so rather than me and Eddie rattling on about it and not really knowing what we're talking about, we've actually drafted in a special guest who actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to football, which is quite helpful on an NFL podcast. So dialing in straight from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, is Matt Matei. Matt, welcome to Across the Gridiron. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Eddie. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm not surprised to hear that you haven't talked about the Patriots. We haven't exactly been relevant in the last half decade. So I'm happy to kind of go back on the way back machine here with you all and talk about some Patriots folklore.
Absolutely. And there are plenty of football fans across the globe who are quite happy for the New England Patriots to be irrelevant for a little bit of time, especially as a Miami Dolphins fan. It's nice to actually come second in the league or division for once. So, look, what we're going to do, Matt, is also we just want to talk a little bit about the Patriots today. We want to sort of go back in time. We have a little bit of reminiscing and have a bit of nostalgia. We'll talk a little bit about what it was like supporting the Patriots through the glory years, and then what it's like supporting the Patriots now, because it's been a pretty barren, so I said, half decade or so. So we'll talk about where we think some of the challenges came from a man who's obviously from actually boots on the ground in New England, and then we'll talk about obviously your views on or your sort of prospects of what you think this new season could bring, because there's a lot more optimism around New England this year compared to it has been in previous years. So, but let's go all the way back. You've been a Patriots fan for a long time, but tell us, how did you first become a Patriots fan? Was there a particular game or player or moment that sort of hooked you in? So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and your Patriots story.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, always loved playing the game, football. Obviously growing up as a little kid on the playground, but then getting a little bit more serious, throwing on the pads and, doing what we call Pop Warner here in the States. And then our team was the Patriots. I think the first kind of memory that I have of the New England Patriots was when Brett Favre was whooping up on Drew Bledsoe, and I think it was 1997. And I remember my older brother crying at the end of the game when the Patriots had definitively lost. And so, kind of when I think back, that was like my first introduction was just a normal Patriots team, right? Drew Bledsoe was a great quarterback. He wasn't amazing. He wasn't a Tom Brady. But I do remember those early days, then of course, kind of going into the Brady era and everything that transpired there. Just a great experience, I would say, over the last, 20 plus years, watching that team win down in Foxborough.
Mm,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
always good when something hooks in. You don't set your expectations too high. That's the main thing. It means you get to enjoy those glory years when they actually happen. And talk about in our football in the UK, I support a team that doesn't have any glory years, and in American football, I support a team that has any glory years since I've been following them. So I'm certainly starved of success. So yeah, so you say your early memories was back in 97. So I mean, is there so was there no was there one particular game when you were watching it and you thought, right, yes, this is it for me. This is now me hooked for the rest of my life.
Well, I definitely remember when Bledsoe went out. I mean, just
Okay.
he was a good enough quarterback where you were like, oh my God, our starter's out. And,
Yeah.
obviously nobody wants to see their starting quarterback get hurt. But at the same time, you're thinking, oh, what if this backup guy, this Tom Brady kid is just, you know, the next big thing. So I do remember that. And then I think really the entire season is the 2000 season, 2000 into '01.
Yeah.
And, when we won that first Super Bowl, there was just a ton of kind of Patriots folklore there, whether it was like the snow game,
Mm.
uh, beating the fastest show on turf.
Yeah, the
So
Rams.
all of that really hooked me, and made me a lifelong Patriots fan, I would say for sure. And it's impossible not to love Brady. The guy is just this amazing comeback kid, just tough as nails. Well, maybe not as tough as nails, but certainly didn't ever give up.
Yeah, so it's fascinating because when I started looking at the Patriots and started having this envy about all the stuff that they're doing. Obviously, I'm a Cowboys fan and we've not got anywhere close to the sort of success that Brady has had. But I do remember people talking about that time when Brady was taking over. I think there were like four quarterbacks in your team at the time. And Belichick was like, well, we're gonna keep him because we see something in Tom Brady. Like, do you remember like when during that '01 season, were you thinking, ooh, this might be the beginning of something? Or were you just thinking, well, it's so good to win the Super Bowl, but we don't know if we're gonna get to another one?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of in the back of their head was like, what if this guy's really good? And what if this is just the next quarterback for us? Because it looked like it could have been, at least he had a chance to run with the season based off of what Bledsoe had, gotten in terms of injuries. And, I don't remember if there's any particularly games per se, but I just remember there being a lot of momentum and you're thinking, okay, this is real. And then, of course, we're in the playoffs. There is that snow game. There's that AFC Championship game against the Steelers.
Yeah.
And that at that point, Bledsoe was actually cleared to come back. And they kept Brady in. And you're like, okay, this is real. This is going to be our guy. And then, of course, we ended up winning that Super Bowl. So really, just the momentum that he built up over that season, I think, told people that he was legit. And then just the way that he led the team, you know, certainly going after that Super Bowl, seeing at the parade, just the way that he addressed everybody, like he owned that team for sure.
And the other thing that, when you think about Brady, he almost felt like from the outside, there was almost this profile, of personality of Brady, that he was just an easygoing guy, that he didn't ruffle any feathers. But he got into some, pretty, aggressive scraps, over the years. You talk about the battle with, Peyton Manning, talk about the battle with Richard Sherman, remember before leading up to that Super Bowl. And Brady knew how to like stand up for himself. He wasn't like the pushover kind of quarterback. I mean, for you guys as Patriots fans, you probably saw that up close to know that, well, everyone is saying that he's all this nice, good guy, can never hurt anyone, but you guys kind of saw that toughness and fierceness in Brady.
Yeah, he could definitely talk, and I think that that's like a big component of the NFL. He loved to chirp in the refs' ears as well, and I know that I'm sure Matt can attest.
Oh yeah.
Opposing fans just hate that, but as obviously we loved it because the refs would favor pretty
Yeah,
much anything that Brady was doing.
yeah,
But he could certainly talk, and he was not afraid to get in anybody's face.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Well, he certainly had his a few controversies follow him around, but I just want to go back. I'm sure we might even touch on some of those controversies later in this part. Just want to go back. Obviously, the funny thing with Brady, and there's a few quarterbacks who have done this. Obviously, more recently, obviously, you've had Brock Purdy sort of come from nowhere to lead the 49ers. But Brady was someone who wasn't that well regarded coming into the draft, right?
Right.
He was sixth round, 199 overall when you picked him. I mean, we've in the last couple of weeks, we've talked a lot about QBs in this current draft because this hasn't been a particularly strong draft for rookie quarterbacks. We've looked at some of the prospects of some of these young guys who are coming in quite low down. But do you remember back in 2000 when you actually picked Tom Brady, or was he just? Did you remember anything? Okay, yeah, this could be a guy who's like, okay, well, we've just got another quarterback, someone to see if he gets cut. I mean, can you remember anything about that draft?
I certainly don't remember us drafting. What I can say about that, though, is there is kind of stories that he walked up to Robert Kraft after the draft and shook him in the hand and said, "I'm the best decision that you've ever made for this organization." And it turned out to be true. But I mean, have you seen Brady when he got drafted? I mean, he looked like a doughboy.
He
He
It
did.
did.
terrible
Had the
shape.
long hair. Yeah.
Yeah, the long hair just looked nothing like his like GQ self now.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know if Kraft believed it or not, but yeah, obviously it worked out.
So, so obviously, right, he then went on this incredible run, like, Super Bowl after Super Bowl. We're wrestling fans, so there's always going to be some wrestling analogy because there's a wrestler right now, Sheamus, that always likes to say banger after banger after banger, and it almost felt like that's what Tom Brady was doing, was like banger after banger, Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Do you look at any of those Super Bowls and, kind of think, yeah, this was the one that was means the most to me in terms of all the different Super Bowls that Brady has won?
I think if I had to pick a single Super Bowl, it would have to be Super Bowl 51 with the Atlanta Falcons, just the comeback game. I mean, for me, just thinking back to that game, it just seemed completely hopeless. And I remember watching because, as you guys all do, getting together with parties, like we all have Super Bowl parties here in the US. You're watching with your friends and other fans. And it's like more intense when it's your team too. So when the team starts losing, just all of the air gets sucked out of the room. And when they started coming back, which mind you was at the end of the third quarter, I
It was the
think.
third
Mhm.
quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just the game seemed like it was over and they just started coming back. Just the absolute epic comeback that game was. I think it's got to be the best.
Yeah, listen, I have a story about that Super Bowl. So I was in Copenhagen that year, and I had this big, project that I was working on. We're working on like remote control ships and things like that. And so I had this big presentation that I was going to do the next day. And so I've been thinking like, how am I going to watch the Super Bowl? I mean, I'm not in the UK. I'm in Copenhagen. I don't know if they like football at all. How am I even going to find what channel am I going to watch the Super Bowl? So I'm like scorching through the, Copenhagen bars, looking for where, I can find like a Super Bowl, game to watch. And then I find like this bar that was not too far away from my hotel, and they were showing the Super Bowl in just one tiny, screen because it's like, I don't know, there were a few people that were watching, but it wasn't a lot of people. And I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, right, let's just see how this goes. And then of course the game starts, and the Atlanta were just amazing. They were just going up and down the field. They were scoring. The Patriots didn't seem to be able to get anything. And at halftime, I think it was like 21 points by halftime or so. And I was thinking to myself, well, maybe I need to go because I've got a big day tomorrow.
Well, it was also 2 in the morning as well, probably
Yeah,
at
it
that.
was it was it was very late in the morning, and I was thinking to myself, I probably need to go. So I went back to my hotel room and I thought, right, I'm just gonna lie down and I'll wake up maybe around about 4 in the morning, thereabout. And so I woke up and it was like a few minutes to the end of the fourth quarter. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? So I started running downstairs back to the bar just to go catch the last glimpses of that Super Bowl. That was incredible, actually, that game.
It was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it has some it has some special memories for me as well, that one, because at the time I was working with an American company who are based in Atlanta. And that entire office was obviously, I think they'd given them like a half a day on the Friday to basically said, right, Super Bowl weekend, have a half day on Friday. And obviously, we're based in the UK. Obviously, then the match happened, and on Monday morning, we got a notification saying, "By the way, the Atlanta guys aren't coming in. We've given them a day off on Monday because they're all just too depressed."
You
It was.
had some very depressed colleagues.
Oh, absolutely. It was hilarious. So so Matt, tell me. Obviously, we've over the past couple of years. Obviously, we've had the Kansas City Chiefs have been sort of a dynasty over the last sort of couple of years. What was it like being a supporter of a team who just keeps winning and winning and winning? I mean, as a fan, it's great. You've got these expectations, you're winning all these games. You're probably at the time the most hated franchise across the rest of the country because everybody wants to see you fail, right? And then there's all these controversies, Deflategate, and all this kind of stuff. What was it? What was it like? Because obviously I know you. You wouldn't hurt a fly. So it's like, what did it feel at that time? You're winning so much, but at the moment, at the same time, everyone's looking at you with this sense of jealousy and maybe even slight hatred because you just keep winning all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we loved the hate, right? Like
Right.
the Patriots haterade definitely like kind of kept us excited. At the same time, I will say a lot of the kind of announcers and pundits do love the Patriots, so that's nice. Uh, I mean, here, and you might need to edit this out, but we would always like the certain segments when they talk about the Patriots, I'd call it the Patriots porn. Because you're just like, oh my God, this is so great. Like we just get to watch a Brady highlight reel and everybody talking about how much they love him, whether it's like Chris Collinsworth or whomever. So we didn't mind it, like watching them win for 20 years. There was also so many different eras of like how they were doing it, who Brady was as a player. Like he went from like young, kind of doughboy Brady to Jesus Brady with the long hair. And then Giselle Brady, which you're like, oh my God, Brady is married to the hottest Super Bowl or the hottest supermodel right
Model.
now.
Yeah.
So that was cool as well. He was in Entourage. I don't know if you remember that HBO.
Hmm.
And then there's also like the different eras of players too, like starting with Troy Brown way back in the day, and like Mike Vrabel, who's obviously now their head coach, and then the Randy Moss time, the Gronk period as well. Obviously, Deflategate, Aaron Hernandez, some like juicy stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kept it super interesting, and then they were winning so much. It's like, okay, well, I think it's something like over basically a 70% chance that they're going to make it to the AFC
Yeah.
Championship for a
Hmm.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we ever got sick of winning, but there was something in kind of the back of your mind that was like, at some point, this is going to end.
And it did, and it did. So you queued us up quite nicely there, Matt. Let's we've talked about the rise, we've talked about what it's like to be on top. Now let's enjoy talking about the fall. Obviously, this has been an area of a sort of period of transition over the last couple of years. I think it's fair to say. But how did you feel personally, and how did the fan base sort of react to when Brady left? And moved to Tampa. Were you shocked? Were you understanding? Were you just bitter about the whole thing? What was that like?
Yeah, I think all of those things, right? Like there was kind of the narrative, or at least what the media was saying, is that Belichick kind of kicked or ran him out of town.
Yeah.
They said that, he wanted to do it on his own, or there's some sort of kind of I'm sorry, Belichick versus Brady feud,
Yeah.
which has never really been validated or not. But that's, kind of just what everyone believes. So I think there was a little bit of bitterness that occurred. Um, and then, I mean, it was basically around the COVID time is when we
Yeah.
kind of did that transition, right, to Cam Newton, who couldn't be more different than Tom Brady, right? Comes in with like a flashy, blue suit and, crazy hair. And it's like, okay, this is definitely not Tom Brady. And this is definitely like a totally different time. And it was COVID, right? Like
Yeah.
everything's just different and weird anyway. So, that whole time period, I just remember as a Patriots fan being like, okay, well, the world is like completely shut down. We have Cam Newton as our quarterback. Like, what the hell is going on here? And then, I think like I think Belichick kind of righted the ship a little bit after that, but I think at the same time, you knew that he had to go in order for the organization to fully change over.
Mm.
Um, and then we got into the last two kind of head coaches, or last head coach and our current coach today, as kind of the path forward.
Yeah, and must have been weird seeing him lift the Super Bowl, the Lombardi Trophy wearing the Buccaneers uniform.
Yeah, it was. And I know like a lot of people were like Bucks fans because of that. You saw a ton of kids walking around in New England with
Ooh.
Bucks jerseys and stuff like that. And it was definitely different, but it was still fun to watch.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So you because again, when you have players who move on or don't renew their contracts, the fan base can go one of two ways, can't they? They could either follow him, still support him, or be bitter, it's dead to us, moving on, that kind of stuff. In the UK, in our football, every time a player gets sold, they're automatically a snake for leaving. It's just the vitriol that can happen sometimes, but. Look, Brady left. He moved on to Tampa, had a couple of years there, but obviously, let's talk about what was left, right? So we've mentioned it a few times. Obviously, whilst Brady was there, you had this amazing winning coach in Bill Belichick as well, right? So Brady and Belichick were pretty much a double team throughout, obviously, that for that entire period. Brady left, and then obviously things started to go south a little bit. So, see, when you look back now, do you think Belichick was making sort of the right calls post Brady, or do you mentioned obviously Newton as to being a person to replace Brady might not have been the best choice, but in retrospect, how do you look at some of the decisions that were made in that time period?
It's a good question, and I think it's obviously very tough to fill Brady's shoes. I think he kind of went to his buddy Nick Saban and said like, "Hey, help me out. Who's the best QB that you got?" And somehow we ended up getting Mac Jones,
Yeah.
which I don't think was a great call. I thought he wasn't the right guy for the job.
Mm.
But I think Belichick was very much about coaching up players to do your job. And I just don't know if he had the right personnel. I also think that, I mean, him being the GM, that event inevitably comes back to him as well. But I think from a GM perspective, he wasn't making the right moves. I think just the personnel, they didn't have the money to find the right people. And then just Mac Jones was not a leader. And so when you train him to do the job of leading the team and he doesn't do that, you're not going to have a team. And that's kind of what the record showed.
Yeah, and there was a lot of, people talking about that because even when Brady was still around, people used to talk about the fact that they never used to draft wide receivers, during, Brady's time. And it was almost like he was going out on the streets and just picking people up and throwing them on the field
It's
and
true.
just making, because I remember that year where you guys had Sonny Michelle. You had Rex Borhead, I think, in the team. Edelman was still there. You had Gronk, and I think Edelman was really suspended or so, for the first 4 games or so in that season. And everyone was like, okay, who's Tom Brady gonna throw to, right? And I think you guys started 2-2 that season. And but eventually you ended up in the playoffs as well. And people were always saying this about Belichick that he's not always giving Brady the right tools. So yeah, I kind of see what you say about did he always make the right decisions? And maybe Brady covered a lot of those with his leadership qualities. So I'm going to ask you the question that everyone always asks, right? So was it Brady or was it Belichick? Who was responsible for all the Super Bowls?
I think it was kind of like one of those perfect storm, lightning in a bottle sort of moments. So I don't know if it was just one person. But, kind of gun to my head, I'm gonna say Brady. I mean, he's one of the best athletes of all time. And to your point, Eddie, right? Like where you had Mike Vrabel, who was a linebacker, catching a touchdown in a Super Bowl from Brady. Like
Yeah.
he could just make it happen. So I do think that Tom Brady did cover up a lot of stuff and just help that team win in ways that you can't just do from the sideline as a coach, as Belichick.
Yeah, and thinking about like, credit, to players and coaches, who are the players that you think never really got, as a Patriots fan? Because we just see the flashy ones, right? There's a player that I have in my mind that people don't talk about, but who are those Patriots players over the years that don't get enough credit for like what they did in the Patriots uniform?
I think that we had a prolific defense and particularly like secondary as well, like the Rodney Harrisons
Yeah,
there, like Asante Samuels. There was some great um, uh, like cornerbacks, safeties over the
yeah,
years
yeah,
that just they had these epic interceptions when you needed them most. Um, and special teams too, like the Troy Brown when he was like returning punts and stuff like that. A ton of players that just probably are slipping my mind. But I do think if there's like an unsung, it's definitely the defense and the secondary in particular.
yeah. Your defense were pretty good. I have to say that. I remember that game against the Rams. This was the golf Super Bowl that was 3-3 for like an insane amount of time.
The most boring Super Bowl ever. Yeah. Yeah.
The most boring Super Bowl. It just felt like there was some kind of force field in the red zone because everyone was getting to the red zone and then strange things were happening. Like, there were interceptions, there were all kinds of, and I remember that defense. I was like, yeah, this defense came to play. And then on the other side, you had DeMarcus Sue and Aaron Donald, um, Peters, what was his name again? Something Peters, as well. The one player though that I remember, from the Patriots is Wes Welker.
Mm.
And I remember him obviously because of the Giants, which is what everyone always remembers, that catch that he was supposed to catch and he didn't. And then there was a punt, and then Giants had that drive and then won that Super Bowl. But when I looked into him, right, I think he's had the one of the most receptions, if not the most receptions, as a um was it tight end or wide receiver? I can't remember what he was.
Yeah, he was like a slot
He was
receiver.
like a slot receiver, right? And he had like, he had prolific productivity with the Patriots, but no one really talks about him except that, sort of catch or not catch that he didn't do. But Brady always used to speak very highly of him, and said
You're
that he was
right.
one
He,
of those
he was
guys.
a great player, Eddie. That's a good call. I wonder if like how much Edelman kind of wiped people's memory of Wes Welker because he's like
Yeah.
also another short
Slots.
slot
Yeah,
receiver,
yeah.
like very speedy, kind of same
And they
build.
had
And
the same kind of beards as well, so almost like
yep, yeah,
under the
same like
helmet.
burly
Yeah.
beard.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's fascinating, because I mean I think he during his time there, Brady used to go to him, a lot of times. I remember like games, and you're like third down, you're looking for who's Brady going to throw to. Wes Welker would just come up with a catch, and stuff. Almost like what, Gronk became,
Mhm.
towards that era where go to in the red zone, Brady goes to Gronk. So yes, I think you're right. There's a lot of players that don't get a lot of credit. During that era, defense, special teams. Um, and it almost felt like Belichick had a way of coaching you guys for situational football. And that was the one thing I always used to admire about the Patriots. You guys never used to have those dumb penalties, right? Those ones where, someone makes a good catch and then it's get done for taunting, right? That's not just what you will see in a Belichick, team, or all those pre-snap, dumb penalties, where there's 12 men on the field or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was almost like he just brought in this culture of just execution.
Yeah.
And it was so cool because I mean, maybe it was just here in New England, but it felt like everyone was just kind of picking up this do your job mantra that Belichick had seemingly introduced.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, just this rigid focus on execution. And also too, like pivoting if they needed to. And I thought that was a big kind of difference between Belichick and Mayo was that, hey, we're going to get on the field, we're going to figure out what they're going to do, and then guess what? We can completely throw this game plan away and pivot if we need to. Versus Mayo, who really just wanted to get them coached. And I think he even went on record for saying like, hey, once this player crosses the line, meaning like enters the game, there's nothing more that I can do for them. So just such focus on in-game execution and just doing your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, let's keep talking about this era of transition because obviously, I mean, if the stats or the recent run doesn't make for pretty reading, does it? So obviously, the last Super Bowl win was 2018. 2019, he still won the division, the AFC South.
Still a great game.
Yeah. So, but since then, you haven't won a division since 2019, third in 2020. You've only had one winning record since then, which was in 2021, where you came second, but lost in the wild card to the Bills. And obviously, the last two seasons, you've come last in the division. So obviously, this has been. I mean, as a Dolphins fan, it's been fantastic, and it's been great since we've known each other, Matt. We've been having our whiskey bets where we'll get a drink, or whoever loses that match will get the drinks in, and it's pretty much been you the entire time, which has been great for me. But
by the way, how was that bottle of bourbon that I sent?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was very smooth, my friend, very smooth. So that was fantastic. That was a great Christmas. Thank you. So, how obviously given all the issues that we've go through, how has that made you? Well, actually, I'll ask that question next. For you, what has been the toughest part of this season, being a Pats fan? Is it just because you've used to have being so high, now you're dropping so low? Is it the expectation? Is it just a drive to try and get back to at least get into the playoffs again? What's been the toughest part for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the toughest part is just not seeing anything work like it has in the last several years. I mean, I think that there's an element of this is somewhat refreshing. This is what a normal fan feels like, right? Just like frustration with your team. And because there was none of that. So there is an element of, hey, this is kind of refreshing, but it is frustrating when, on Sunday afternoon, you tune in, you crack a beer, and then you're just pissed off for the next, 3 hours because everything is just horrible. And I mean, the last game that we saw, the regular season, when we blew our chances at the first round draft pick, I thought that was more frustrating than losing any of our Super Bowls. Maybe not the perfect season one, but just losing all season. And then there's this one glimmer of hope of like, hey, we get a draft pick out of this, which Patriots fans have never seen, the first round pick, or at least in my lifetime. And then, just completely blew our chances of it. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some frustration, and obviously you don't want that as you're watching your favorite team every Sunday.
Yeah, that's fascinating because last season we were sort of talking about, and when we got to that time and teams that were winning, we were talking about the Patriots and the Panthers. They were like, who wants to give up that number one, seed? And then it was kind of going up, it was Patriots, it was Titans, it was Panthers, and the Panthers now when they started winning a bunch of games, and it was like, what's going on? So that's kind of fascinating that Patriots fans were like, thinking about, the draft positions, because that's kind of like you rarely wouldn't associate that with Patriots fans. You kind of think about other teams who are like, yeah, we like the Browns had that number one spot locked down for a long.
Oh yeah, they owned it. And everyone was talking about Travis Hunter, like, oh, we might be able to get him. And yeah, the only thing that was keeping our hopes alive during that whole season. Then Gerard Mayo just smashed it that day.
Yeah.
What a legacy he left. Okay, well, that's a good time to sort of transition on to the future. I mean, so look, you've had your dark days. I mean, hopefully for you, obviously back to back fourth place finishes in the AFC East, but But when we've spoken in the past, Matt, you've generally seen a lot more positive about this coming season. Now, when me and Eddie a couple of weeks ago, when we did our kind of very short snapshot predictions for the division and all the divisions, obviously we had Bills winning it, right? Which goes kind of is the obvious thing to say. But that second place between the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots, I think is very, very open.
Yeah.
Right, and it really could be anyone's. I can't see three teams going through to the playoffs. I don't think the division's that strong. But coming into the next season, the season after, how positive are you that you think good times are ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you highlight a big challenge for the Patriots, which is that the division is so strong, right? The Bills are one of the best teams in the league, right? I'd say like the second best team, depending on kind of the week or the season.
Yeah.
I'd say Josh Allen is definitely number two quarterback in
Yeah.
the league. And then Tua is amazing as well, right? And if he can be healthy and if that team can kind of remain healthy, the Tua Tyreek Hill combo in the past has just been like deadly. There's a ton of other weapons emerging. So yeah, I mean we have to get past, the Bills or at least just secure a wild card spot. I think that what we've done is essentially retraced our steps, right? When things go wrong, we kind of just like stop and retrace our steps and find some semblance of like the Patriots way, which was Mike Vrabel. And I think that we're now deploying some capital in good ways. We're bringing in the right folks, at least from like a positions perspective, like this new OT that came in. Will Campbell looks pretty promising. We're kind of infusing some old talent into the wide receiver core. So I do believe in Drake Maye. I think he looks like a great quarterback. I think there's general consensus around the league and just other quarterbacks and retired quarterbacks saying that Drake Maye is a really talented player. And I think that if he can step up from a leadership perspective, and if Vrabel can do well as a head coach, which he's proven he can do with the Titans, at least for a season or two, I think that there's a solid shot. But we still need to get past the Bills, and then the Dolphins are kind of that wild card as well.
Yeah, but this is the beauty about the NFL, right? Because, and this is kind of how I look at it when I look at teams in divisions, because you only need to play, a team twice, right? So you're only going to play the Bills twice. And if you can do the business, with teams outside of your division, and you try and keep it even kill within the division, you still have a chance, right? I saw a lot of things from Drake Maye, last season, that I thought to myself, if he has a decent wide receiver, or a tight end, that can actually, get him out of sticky situations. I think he makes more right decisions, than wrong ones, so, and you sort of want your quarterback to be doing that, as part of their growth and maturity. So I thought Stefan Diggs was going to come and do that, but I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like they've given him the right kind of cast and support to help him to like get to that next level?
Well, one thing I'll say is that it seemed like in the last season that our run defense, or I'm sorry, our running protection was much better than our passing protection with the O-line. And so I think that somebody, whether it's the O-line coach or just Vrabel and just the larger team, needs to come in and make sure that we can just protect Drake Maye in the pocket. And then, of course, having somebody to throw to certainly helps as well. I don't know if Stefan Diggs is the guy. I mean, he's a very talented player. Obviously, he's getting up there in age. But I think that really remains to be seen. I mean, like you had said, Eddie, Brady always just found a way to make it work with, a second-class wide receiver talent, if you want to call it that. So maybe we can do the same in the Mike Vrabel era and Drake Maye era.
Yeah, I think he's a good coach. I mean, I saw what he did in the Titans. Obviously, you guys, Patriots fans, will remember him dumping you guys, out of the playoffs. Um, but I was watching the preseason, and I know we're going to talk about that. But I saw a couple of players flash, and I know it's the first, preseason game, and you can't get too hyped. But it was this undrafted free agent, Efton Chisholm the third, who popped a little bit in that game. And then the running back, Trevion Henderson, He looked promising, and you can kind of see Vrabel, sort of thinking, oh, I might get something here. And then I think also the offense, Jared Wilson or so. I think that might be his name in the offensive line. I think one of the guys that was drafted this year. He looked quite decent, too as well in the game. So there might be some elements there, whereby Vrabel could cook something, for the Patriots going forward.
From your lips to God's ears, Eddie. I'll say like the opening kickoff, I usually don't like lend much credence to these preseason games, but the opening
Yeah,
kickoff being returned, I'm going to take that as a good omen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just build up the expectations, Matt. Then hopefully they might get knocked down.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's wrap up what I'm dubbing our Pats chat with a few sort of quick fire questions for you, Matt. Right? Okay.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
okay, so no thing. So first of all, in the division, where are you finishing this season?
Second.
Second. Yeah, very confident. I had you down as third because I have to have Dolphins second. If you can pick one player from the glory years in his prime to be playing for the Patriots now, and you can't choose Brady, who would it be?
Gronk.
Gronk, of course. If nothing, if for nothing else, but for nothing else for the party.
Gronk kicks Travis Kelce's ass.
Yeah.
I think that's both in football and in real life.
Yeah.
But I'm sure this might be the same answer actually. But if you could have a beer or a whiskey with one Patriots player or coach, past or present, who would it be?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'd say probably Gronk if it's a beer. If it's a whiskey, maybe Belichick.
Yeah. Well, I imagine they're going to be two very different nights out, aren't they?
You never know, according to what Belichick's been up to lately.
Oh yeah, this is true.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, and in 3 words, sum up what being a Patriots fan means to you.
That's a tough one. In 3 words, what is
That's a tough one. Okay, that's 4.
Sundays are good.
There we go. There we
I've got
go.
one final one, right? We've got to settle it, right? Because we've got, a Dallas Cowboys fan and we've got a Patriots fan. And there's always been this thing about, who is the real American team. So, so where do you stand on, the American team? Do you think that the Cowboys are imposters and the Patriots are the American team? What's your take?
You got to win a Super Bowl this millennium compared to America's team.
We need to at least get to the championship.
No, I love watching the Cowboys. They're always prime time. It's fun. I remember some of like the Troy Aikman days, and I still think that they're America's team. But, that being said, the Patriots were for a time tough contenders.
Yeah. It's hard to disagree with you there.
Yeah, I think he makes a great point. You can no longer call yourself America's team until you win a Super Bowl again.
Yeah,
I think that's what we can all agree on.
This was going to be our year.
Yeah, sure it is, Eddie. So look, Matt, really appreciate having you on. Are you going to stick around for part 2?
I actually have to hop. So,
okay. We're on different time zones, mate. You've got to go. You've got to go look after your little boy.
I got the kid coming home in like 5 minutes. So
yeah. Well, the good thing is ours are all in bed. So look, on that note, then, Matt. Look, thanks a lot for joining us across the gridiron. I'm sure it won't be the last time. It's been great to have you on, mate.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. It was my pleasure and fun, kind of walking down memory lane with you. So thank you for including me.
All right, then, Matt. Cheers.
You, Matt.
I'm the bad.